Welcome to the Sacred Rebellion, the space where truth isn't filtered, sovereignty is sacred, and the rebellion is a return to self. This isn't just a podcast, it's a remembering. We're here to break the trance of comfortability, reclaim our gifts, and rise as the embodied rebels we were born to be. Here we journey with the wild hearts, the way showers, and the visionaries who chose their truth over comfort, their mission over fear, and their soul over the system. This is where the coded ones come to speak, the ones who didn't fit in because, well, they were never meant to. And the ones who turn their pain into their power and their story into their medicine. So drop in, take a breath, and let's remember who we are, one sacred rebellion at a time. Welcome back to the Sacred Rebellion, the space where sovereignty leads, systems are questioned, and the cosmic truth, it always finds its way home. Today we welcome our guest, John Edmonds-Kozma, CEO and founder of Bang Productions, and has over 20 years in the entertainment industry. He revolutionized comedy by taking Southern Mama from social media to Just for Laughs in only 2 years, setting a new industry standard, host of the Unoppressed podcast, and the author of Finding a Perfect Audience. John blends business savvy, spirituality, and innovation rise authentically. Welcome to the show, John.
Thanks for having me, Michelle.
Let's jump into it. Tell me a little bit how your first really spiritual experience happened. I've heard it's a really great experience and really powerful.
Well, I had a friend of mine in the entertainment business, and his name was Eric Neese, and he worked for MTV for many years and hosted The Grind on MTV. This is way back in the day. I mean, he's several years older than me, but we were friends, and he left Viacom, and his best friend was my best friend in college, and we hooked up, and I followed him around. I think we were ahead of our time because, I think we did a show called The Healer 20 some years ago. And, I didn't really understand what was going on at that time. I just kind of watched Eric and what he was doing. I didn't completely believe in it. He introduced me to Dave Sandoval, who's a leading superfoods guy. And Dave actually tested the product and built most of his product on us and our friends, Purium. We were kind of the human test dummies, and now he's got a pretty big company. Because I thought it was always the foundation of food, and years and years and years went on. I got into the food finally. I healed my body with food through Dave's program, so the green light went off. And I've been working with Brian Graydon and just sold a show to USA Network. And Brian Graydon ran MTV for 13 years during the heyday, and he discovered South Park and so forth. So we developed a show with Brandon Lang, because at the time I managed Brandon Lang, who was in Two for the Money, and Matthew McConaughey played his life story, and Al Pacino was in that movie, and he was the number one sports handicapper in the world. And we were managing him at the time, and we created a show that we sold to USA with him. And during that same period, Eric was in Malibu hanging out with this lady, Mariah and Riaz, and they were kind of in the spiritual community, and they had a lot of people over their house all the time. And Eric's calling me. He's like, "This is a TV show, I said, "Really?" He said, "You got to come to LA and do a journey with us." And he had tried to get me to do a journey for like 7 years. So finally I said, "Screw it, I'll go do it." So it was in La Forest Canyon in Malibu. So if you're coming down Pacific Coast Highway, make a right on La Forest Canyon. It's up there on the right. And so long story short, we show up there and talk, and what they would do is they would do these journeys, shamanic journeys, whatever it is. And then when people would get under this state, they would talk to you about their problems. So it was me, Eric, one of his girlfriends, and then Mariah and Riz. And so we were holding hands, took the shit. And then I laid down on the couch, and Riz is walking around, release the hooks. So I stand up, and he's like, "You would stand up." So I stood up for a minute and started feeling a little woozy. And I started seeing all these swirls, right? A lot of swirls. And I went out and laid down. And I guess when I was fully under this state, this lady came up to me, and she looked like the devil. And then my friend, Eric, looked like a dragon. And then Riz was clear. And as soon as I saw her, something shut off. I didn't speak to anybody else. And then all of a sudden, I'm laying there on the ground, and I hear like this rattle stuff, like a chant. And it was like rattles, like circling me. Like they were like, "We got you. We're going to protect you from these people." And then it got into a deeper conversation that I don't remember a lot of. But I think, what I realized is that sensibility, when my senses were heightened, I could see things very vividly in who they really were. And through this thing, it was, they were like, "You don't know your bloodline. You can do anything you want to do." You don't know the power of God. You're a king. And all this stuff just whispering in my head. They said, do you want to be Da Vinci? They would tell me, do you want to be Da Vinci? You can be Da Vinci, and all this kind of stuff. So I was like, okay. So Eric and this lady are on the periphery. And supposedly, when I was laying on the ground, when I was talking to these people, I was like, check, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, check, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, check.
Mm-hmm.
Very mechanical, like
Mm-hmm.
check. Like I was going through a checklist, like someone was giving me information to follow through. And, they protected me through that whole thing. And I come out of that and I didn't say anything about what I saw to Eric or anybody there. And then 6 months later, hadn't talked to Eric or whatever. 6 months later, I said, did you get rid of the devil bitch? Is what I said to him. And he was living with him, and she ended up stealing $50,000 from him and tried to do stuff.
Whoa.
Yeah. Do stuff that, do stuff to him under under sedation or whatever. But he didn't know until that time,
Hmm.
right? Until I said something, what I saw. So then 12 years later, 3 years ago, when I saw him, he was very vivid, dragon, long tail, very vivid,
Mm-hmm.
yellow colorish, with like a purple and reddish like things on top of this tail. And I never said Eric what I saw. So Eric came to Charleston 12 years later, and we had been filming some ceremonies in Peru because he wanted to film, ayahuasca ceremonies live to show the world what these ceremonies look like. So we'd been filming
Mm-hmm.
there, and he said under ceremony, he says this dragon would show up. Like, now I hadn't talked to Eric in 12 years about this, didn't tell him what I saw. He said this dragon would show up, and I was trying to get this dragon out of me. But then I find out he is me, and he's here to protect me. And Eric had a dragon on his back, and my wife was a witness for what I saw. So it kind of blew everybody away at that moment 12 years later that Eric has this dragon tattooed on his back, and he tells us a story about fighting this dragon, who is actually him who's protecting him.
Mm-hmm.
And then ever since then, that's when everything changed. That's when I tapped into more and more and more. And I think it's been a progression, of different things, just things I've learned through the years. It's been a total progression when the stones started responding to me. And it was almost like I was pushed this direction to some extent.
Yeah, it's
But
like
after
this.
that, that's when I tapped in.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like this natural gravitational pull, for me, it's always been catalyst moments, right? It's like just pulling me one way. And I always tell people, I'm like, when you're supposed to do this type of work, it runs through your veins. It's like, it's a frequency in your bones and you can't ignore it. And it just keeps pushing you forward. That just brings forward so much more information about yourself and clarity that you've always kind of known. But then it's just like almost like that validation.
Well, I don't even know at that time. I don't even know what I knew,
Mm-hmm.
because I saw all my friends. It was weird because all my friends were trying to be who I became, and it was like, I didn't ask for this,
Yeah.
I just have it, and it's just been, like I said, a major progression since that point of my life.
What did you notice that shifted and at 3 years ago when you had that moment with Eric and you shifted? What have you noticed has changed in your consciousness and your awareness? What's changed in your reality?
Well, I think I always, looking back, I think I always had certain abilities, certain intuitions that I would tap into that I didn't realize. I just think things got more vivid for me and things became like a bigger chessboard. I saw like energy, dark energy, light energy. Um, it's almost like I could see, it's almost like I could see the world, and there's big chessboards of where I need to go of energy or not go. And in my business, my business took off, and yeah, I just started seeing things more clear for what they were. And then I guess I started getting all these downloads, through social media. I learned a lot through social media because, it's human behavior.
Mm.
So understanding human behavior is a big deal. And, you can learn human behavior through social media if you're on social media enough and you're controlling the narrative. If you're controlling the narrative through social media, like running ads, creating audiences and things like that, you start to understand that social media is just a mirror of human behavior.
Mm.
So I think, and I changed comedy with social media, right? Because it's the first time an act had been broken, nationally through social media, right? They told me in 2016 that comedy didn't need social media. Now everybody copies my model. And at
Mm-hmm.
the time too, they had the program Watch Out, and they had all these cold opens. And when I started understanding ADD and attention deficit, right, I was the one who
Mm-hmm.
pioneered the radio edit. So I said, let's get rid of these cold opens. Let's just do joke, joke, joke. Because in the 50s and 60s, they would edit a radio show just with the hot points. So I did that with video, and that's what started all the viral videos. We used to get 30 million, 50 million views of video, like in like a couple hours.
Wow.
So we pioneered that, and then that led to touring. We sold out 150 shows in a row, and I've done over 750 live shows in comedy and country music from 200 to 5,000 people. So that all evolved, and then I got burnt out, after doing 750 live shows. Took a little break this year,
Mm-hmm.
but still became a partner with Meta. Been a partner with Meta for 5 years. We have a TikTok live agency where I work with live creators, because I'd been in entertainment a long time, and I didn't realize what went off my head after that, after that event and changed things. When I talked to people in entertainment, they didn't know what I was talking about. But when I talked to people in tech, then I realized that my intelligence was in tech. And that's when I started consulting for these major tech companies and telling them what they were doing wrong. I mean, I would note out a whole department at Facebook. Like, I don't know, at one time they had a live event thing, and they were trying to push these live events in the back end.
Mm-hmm.
And I told them it would never work. And they got rid of the whole department. So that's one thing they took my advice on. And the other thing they took my advice on is recently they did this big change because the back end assets of how people got paid, they made an asset per like a payout account per asset, which was a disaster. So finally I got them to combine all assets into one where it can pay through one account. And that goes into play the end of this month, August 1st. So
What
I
does that
think
look
that
like?
understanding the rationale of social media, I didn't realize I was that intelligence I didn't know I had until I started working in that space.
Yeah. Is your background is in business though, correct?
Yeah, but I mean backgrounds, yeah. I mean but I was bored in school. Hell, I never went to class. I don't even think I had books in college. You know what I mean? And
Figured.
still got a degree. I would go to class and just was bored.
Mm-hmm.
But still, like I
Redundant.
said, still got a 4-year degree with no books. That's a trip.
That's hilarious. I wish that was my case, but that was not my case. I'm a really good scan reader, so that's how I got my I technically have a 5-year bachelor's, but yeah, I scan read really quickly. So, I mean, education. I have a teaching
But think about that. If you have this highly intelligent information within you, something like school is just going to bore the shit out of you. So
Yeah.
if you're out there bored in school, it may not be a negative.
Yeah.
It may not be a negative.
Yeah. I mean, you may have that creative mind that you're able to co-create something within yourself,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Tell me a little bit about, I know you just went to Bermuda. Do you want to talk about your experience there?
Well, 4 years ago when I came to Charleston, 5 years ago, when I came to Charleston, I met a Reiki master, Tina Clark, and, I was searching, because I had the stone respond to me, the whole thing with Eric. So I was searching. So I went and did a session with her, and she was the person that told me my bloodline was from John the Baptist 4.5 years ago. And
Mhm.
then that's when I went on this search of trying to figure out who the hell am I? A couple years later, these mountains and stuff at Lake Lure, I felt like they were talking to me. And then I find a face, realize that Chimney Rock's a granite monolith, that I found a face on. There's a Black Panther Sphinx looking back exactly west at the granite monolith. The granite monolith looking exactly east. And I saw too, like, something's interesting with that is the equinox goes east to west. So I'm just thinking these pieces east to west are very, very interesting. Just more and more, interviewing all these, 15 or 20 different spiritual people around the world, kept saying the same thing. And, if I have something that is powerful or can help humanity, then I want to make sure I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing. And led to me talking to you. I was told I needed to go ground this triangle,
Mhm.
right? Talking about the triangle, going to the triangle, and we can get into that. How I realized that there's 4 systems there's 4 systems on Earth, and each have a 3-part binder. And I was told already grounded Chimney Rock. That was done first. And then I went to Bermuda and went on this wild goose chase and went to the NASA facility out there. But what was weird was when I was standing at the point of this thing, you could see all this coral. Like, they call it coral. And the people in Bermuda are so brainwashed. They're like, it's 1962. Like, the information they're getting on that island is so suppressed. Like, just by this post, you could tell I put up, like, all these people from Bermuda are commenting. They're like, good try, America, good try. But everything I do, I feel. And everything I talk about, I feel.
Yep.
So, like, the feeling is driving me. And that's the difference. Like, that's why people don't get it. Like, this is what I feel. This is in me.
Right.
This is in my bones. This is, I know you don't feel this way, but if I feel it, then usually it's true.
Yeah, clairsentient. Right? Your body doesn't lie to you. It just doesn't. And I tell people that's one of the best clairs to develop when you're awakening is your clairsentient, which is your feeling, because your body's going to give you like, this is a hell yes, or this is a hell no. And it will tell you because the body is programmed to tell you truth. In my opinion.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. Your body's programmed to tell you truth. So when I found all this discovery, I found 2 quadrant rivers in Chimney Rock. I found a vortex. I found out that the Broad River still flows into the Atlantic Ocean today through Santee, and the Broad River starts at the Intercontinental Divide. That the Appalachian mountain range is connected to the Atlas mountain range, which I think is the other. I found that talking about Chimney Rock, finding the 4 quadrants, the Broad River starts at the Intercontinental Divide, still flows into the Atlantic Ocean today. Found a vortex up there. And when you look up there, you can tell these rocks are really, really old. So with this information that nobody's ever talked about, me finding all this information, I says, if they want me to go to Bermuda, and I talked to you and you said your guides would tell me to go to Bermuda.
I don't know anything about it. I just said, there's a really tall hill in Bermuda. That's where you need to go. I didn't know anything else.
So I went to the tallest point. But what's weird about that, I went to the tallest point and I grounded by this area. And when I was looking around, when I was coming down the hill, it looked like there was some like old walls, right? And I thought it was a pyramid, but there was one big wall that they had this big beehive in front, looked old as shit. So it's almost like I felt like there was something on that hill they were hiding. And then, then I did the grounding, went down, and all of a sudden I said, what else am I going to do? And then I don't know what came through, and I started looking, and I found where the old NASA facility was. I said, interesting. I hadn't even planned to go there.
Yeah, I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah, I didn't plan to go there. So I went out there, and what's interesting about that, they had that facility there because Bermuda is one of the only places that you can see from space. The astronauts could see from space every time.
Interesting.
Right? And so that aligns with a lot of stuff. And I always said that, if it felt like tides in there, right? Because when you look at the boats, if that's the center of the Earth, and you look at the boats, how they park the boats, there's no current. They just sit there. They're tied under, right? Now, if there's unbalance, obviously there's a little bit of a current and tide now. But if there's complete balance, I think tides and currents end that area. So I went out to the NASA facility, and I'm standing out here on this point, and all this coral looks very symmetrical. It looked like there's something on top, like big blocks, very symmetrical all around. I'm like, how can coral be that symmetrical, right? And I'm walking around the whole facility, and this is, and I said, God, can you show me something? And this is the post I put up. And I look around, and I swear that it looked like this slit. I won't say what it looked like, but it looked like this limestone sand had been pushed out. Somebody had been pushed out, freshly pushed out. And I think if people were there and saw that, where it had been freshly pushed out, and I look and I see this face with a narrow body all the way going back, right? Everybody's like, I don't see anything. Well, if your frequency is not high enough, you're probably not going to see anything.
Yep, that's spot on.
But why did it look pushed out? Why is there a face there? And why is it looking at me at the time when I asked God to show me something?
Yep.
Right. So it is what it is.
Yeah.
So then I went up to the very point, and I'm looking out, and and then they got this whole beach. It's pink sand, this huge pink sand beach. It's beautiful, incredible. Wow. It's like probably the prettiest beach I ever seen, and nobody's on it. It's just me on this facility, maybe 3 other people. And I'm sitting
Interesting.
there and I'm bringing light energy through my crown chakra, through my feet, and I'm grounding that area as well. But after I did that and I started walking around the island, it was weird. I would go into pockets of energy and I would feel somewhat euphoric after doing that. So I think I did cleanse some things out there, and I did what I was supposed to do. And we
Mm-hmm.
got one more task to do during the equinox, and we'll do that and just see what happens.
Yeah.
You know, it's not, I'm not claiming anything, but, you know, I did predict on July 5th, I did predict that this would be the biggest storm season in history. And if you can look after July 5th, I don't know where that information came from, me grounding the area.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where that information came from, but that seems to be coming true this year. And we
Yeah.
can get into the system, the 4 systems and so forth of what I discovered of understanding the 4 systems of the universe.
Yeah. I will know, like, I was taking a shamanism class. It was like I only took a handful of classes, and one of them was shamanism. And it was very interesting because she actually shared a photo of like a little person, like a little person. You can actually see a little person, and then you can actually see like a fairy. And it was very interesting because some people could see it and some people couldn't see it. And when she sent it through, it took me about maybe like 15 seconds to be like, and she didn't tell us where it was. And I was like, okay, there's the little person. And it was like this little teeny, and picture's pretty blurry. It was like this little tiny person. And then there's this, like, it looks like a flower, but if you actually look at it differently, you can actually see the little fairy with her little cotton hat and stuff. And it was very interesting because I could see it really clearly. And I showed it to a few people, and not everybody can see that photo. So I see the, they're like, there's nothing there. Like, I'm like, you don't see this little person right here? And they're like, nope, that's a stick. And it's very interesting. So I definitely do believe that, like, if you don't hold a certain frequency and a belief system, because belief actually influences your frequency, then you're not going to see something. So, like, I know when you sent me the photo, it took me about 10 seconds, and then I saw the man, and he's kind of looking like this, poking his head out. So I'm a firm believer that if you do not have a certain frequency or a belief system, and you are, you're obviously not in the level of consciousness, you're not going to actually see through those dimensional aspects. It's even like people see, giants. Like, that's a big thing right now on the internet, is like giants and mountains. Like, you can actually see a shape of a Native American, and it's like a huge giant laying, but it's a mountain range. But if you look from the top, it looks like a human. And so I'm just a firm believer. Like, you have to hold a certain frequency to be able to see things, and also have that belief system that anything's possible.
Well, after understanding this, it's just crazy to me how many people their frequency so low and they just don't get it. And it just drives me crazy, and I think
Yes.
that if you don't start to wake up pretty soon, I mean, you're going to have some issues, and it's
Yeah.
just like in Lake Lure. I got photos of faces, multiple faces in Lake Lure, big faces. And a lot of people didn't see it there. But
Mm-hmm.
a lot of that stuff up there was very defined. It was just old as shit. Very,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the other thing. I don't think we're looking back far enough. We're short sighted. If creation started 4.6 billion years ago, there's a lot happened between now and then. And we're only scratching the surface about Atlantis 15,000 years ago, right? Is it 15,000 years ago? That's not back far
Atlantis?
enough.
Atlantis? I think Atlantis was sooner than Plato. Plato talks about Atlantis. Is it Plato?
I'm not
I
sure. I
don't
thought
think
it's like
Atlantis was.
10 to
I don't think Atlantis
15.
was that far away. I think it was probably close to. I think it was probably the Great Flood, which would have been maybe like 2,500 years ago. I don't think Atlantis was that far away. I think it coexisted, shortly before Egypt. I don't know how far along that was, but maybe 6,000. No, I don't think it was
Yeah.
millions of years ago.
Yeah. So put that in perspective. And if there's, my intuition tells me that God has done this before. And if there's 53 ancient civilizations, they've all been created right here.
Yeah.
And I think there's fractions of each of those creations that is left over that you have to deal with that may, have accepted dark or light energy, which has pushed them a different direction. So I think that's why I always say there's 2 mindsets in the world. And this is where people got to get out of, is there's a discovery mindset, which everybody's in. We want to discover. We want to discover. We don't need to discover anything. We already have all the information. So if you understand creation, you can get to the answers quicker. And because I understand creation, that's why I think I can get to these answers quicker. But everybody's still caught up in discovery mode and telling all these stories and taking these fractional bits of information and telling these stories like a Disney movie. And there's a lot of misinformation in that fraction, right? Let's just go to source, figure out creation, and stop all this nonsense in between and quit wasting time.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think for me, it's like I when I've done regressions, the higher self always tells, information. And for me, it's like if you hear the same story over and over and over again from various people that don't know each other, that to me is truth. That's that, like, if the story is repetitive and it's the same story from different people, regardless of their background, regardless of what they believe, it's the same story, then that story has to be accurate. It's like when I've done regressions on Atlantis, it's the same story. There was a big explosion. There was a vaccination that happened that altered people's DNA system. They used animals. And it's the same story. And it's been very interesting because even Sarah Cosme, she's wrote a story on Atlantis, and that's what I've experienced. What she talks about is what I've had in my sessions. So it's if the story is repeating itself, like Lemuria, there was a big flood. There's people that are terrified of water. They come in and they have a phobia of water, but they've never drowned or had a near-death experience. But why do they have that? It's because those lifetimes, we have memories in our cells. We have memories in our DNA system. And those are the things that are being activated right now, which is awakening people into the remembrance of these ancient information technology. And, it's like Tartaria. I went down the rabbit hole with Tartaria and all these really magnificent buildings that happened, in the 1900s, they built all these magnificent buildings, but we can't build those buildings today, So I think you've gone down that rabbit hole, but it's like, so there has to be a time that was also a flood where they wiped systems, which would have been like, around the 80s, where they were building all these major buildings. And you can always tell they're from Tartaria because they're very intricate. They have these very interesting buildings like cathedrals in New York City, and they know that those are on specific lines, and they've taken out the copper and they've done things. And so obviously, like there's a lot of history that we don't talk about, where people just don't logically think through, like, there's no way in hell we could have built that. We can build that now, which we supposedly are ahead of what they were, 300 years ago, but we can't build those buildings today. We don't even have the ability.
Well, when we accepted the Newtonian model of reality and we're waiting, because I was thinking about that this morning. It's like everybody, even like Joe Rogan and some of these talk show hosts, it's like they're waiting for the right answer. Why are we waiting for the right answer when we already have all the answers? And they won't report on something or talk to something because they're waiting on the right answer. So are we all just, are we all that naive that we're still gerbils, looking for food? Because that's how everybody's responding. Like, quote, I don't want to get on here and be instinctively honest because I need to wait for everybody else to verify this bullshit information so I can talk about the same thing. It probably is misleading. Like, hello, why are we waiting? What are we waiting on?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like we're waiting for everything to be blessed, right? That's the problem. And that's why we're going back. That's why I think when you think about science and you think about the system that has been created maybe from that point and only using two parts of law of attraction, you're not going to be able to build those buildings, right? Because you're not allowing your creativity and the sensibilities being part of this society. And we're calcifying your pineal gland.
Yep.
That's why you can't build those buildings, because you're not creative enough.
Right.
We're not getting the information. The information's already there. We can build these buildings, but let's decalcify our pineal gland first. Let's understand our focus sensory and get back to our creativity and have science plug back in the sensibilities, esoteric part, and utilize all three parts of law of attraction. Then that's when humanity can evolve.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we're at now, that this frequency change is making humanity realign so God can get the right information so humanity can evolve.
Right. And also, when people open up their third eye, then they know they don't need actually validation from someone else. You just speak your truth. You know what I'm saying? Like,
100%.
and so it's really interesting to me because AI is really big right now. And I'm seeing a lot of like false information being sent out with AI. And this is where, like, when you were talking about, I follow my body, I trust my body. And so I move accordingly with what my body says. And it's like, people are going to have to start to realize that not everything that you see on the internet is real, even if it may look like, or even if someone, quote, a psychic or someone channels that it's real, it's still not necessarily real. Like, there was a video of like Yellowstone exploding or the animals leaving, and there was like these huge AI videos about it. And I don't live that far from Yellowstone. I'm like, that's not happening, guys. Like, it's not true. It's not, you're so, like, pay attention to details. There's video of snow. We don't have snow. It's fucking August here. Like, we don't have snow right now. And
Videos
we
of
don't have,
snow.
no, it was like showing snow videos. Like, we don't have snow right now. We don't get snow till
Yeah.
like October. And especially in
Interesting.
Yellowstone, I grew up an hour and a half from Yellowstone. So it's like, it's not happening, and they're like, oh, they're leaving by the masses. It's like, no, that's not happening. Like, use your brain. Like, think about, if this was really happening, look at the local news and see if they're reporting on it. Cause they would report, oh, they're just having massive migration out of Yellowstone. Like, that's all a sign. And so what people are doing is they're taking one little thing that might be a conspiracy theory, and we're you talk about creation, we co-create things. So if enough people start to believe it, you can actually create things in your reality that you don't necessarily want, like a doomsday timeline or, explosion of Yellowstone or whatever. I'm not saying that's happening, but like, that's what happens when collective consciousness creates, because you create what you want in your reality with the power of your thought and belief and frequency. And when you have the combination of those, that's what's creating the momentum in the matrix, in the system, in this holographic system. So the more that you spread false information, the more you're consenting to that in your reality. And so when you talk about creation, it's like, you have to realize you have to have a bullshit meter. We're not, this isn't like a little, game. Like, this is, you came to Earth because you wanted a PhD. Your soul is like, I know this shit. And it's about remembering who the fuck you are in your internal, instead of feeling like you have to look outside of yourself for the answers. It's like, you see a video and you're like, yeah, I just feel that's like bullshit. Then trust that. Like, your first instincts is what is truth. And I always tell my clients, like, when you start to channel and you learn your intuition, that first hit, without your mind thinking about something, that's your intuition. And then I always ask for my body to give me that confirmation within my physical. Give me a confirmation, give me an extra sign to give me that validation. Especially if you're new to channeling, you're going to want some physical response. So if you're co-creating and you're quote manifesting, or you're creating, you're co-creating your reality all the time by what you're consenting to.
Well, I mean, COVID's a perfect example.
Yep. Co-creating it. Fear.
Yeah.
Fear is the fastest way. Think about it. If fear can manifest something that quickly, how quickly could love manifest something? Yeah.
Well, it's when I did this guess, right? Netflix has a world algorithm, and the way we're structured now, we get up, you hear a fucking alarm. All right, we're starting off the day terrible, so because you hear alarm, so
Yep.
we're perpetuating negative energy just by the alarm alone, and then we're going through our day, right? So I said instinctively, I bet you Netflix is programming. They're pushing to do 75% dark programming. And I think it was 70-80% dark programming, because that's what people are attracted to.
They are.
Because we're
They are.
creating the dark energy. People are attracted to that same energy. Tone attracts tone. So 75% of the programming on Netflix is dark for a reason. But that pendulum can go the other way, right? Why is it not 75%? Hero driven, positivity, light. That's how naive we are.
Yep. That's even in the spiritual community. You get people on there that jump on there like, we just had 3 solar flashes and we had X cloud. Now be prepared for body aches and this and that and all their negative, like flu-like symptoms. And if you're feeling irritated, it's because of something outside of you. It is because the solar flash triggered something within you that made you irritated and upset. And now you're extra tired and you're all these things. It's like, newsflash, that solar flash is actually mirroring something for you to show you what shit you have stuck in your body. So your irritation, your anger, your fear, your body symptoms, that's all your dirty laundry that you haven't removed out of your system. That's your shadow work. That's not an excuse outside of yourself to make an excuse for being an asshole. No, that's your shit. That's your shadow work. That's what those solar flares are doing from you. And you can either take those solar flare energies and I'm getting on a soapbox here, John. You can either take those energies from the solar flares and say, you know what, amplify my frequency to be more magnetizing, to bring in more abundance. Or you can be like, I had to lay in bed all day because I was so sick from those solar flares and I yelled at my kids because of the solar flares. Like, choose what you want your frequency to be. It's all consent. There's my soapbox. I'm done.
Well,
But it's true.
100%. I mean, well, it's, you feel, that is kind of messed up that spiritual people would tell people that, because
They do.
they don't even understand that's about alignment. So if your shit is out of a line, if your shit's not aligned,
Yeah.
right, you're going to feel these things because you're not in alignment. So
Right.
that's misinformation right there.
Exactly.
And I think
But that's what sells.
well, I think that's why I've been thrown into this game for some reason, because, it's building foundation.
Same. I've been thrown in this game too, and it's funny because I've had a few reels post on different podcasts, and people are like, "Why are you sarcastic about this?" And I'm like, because if I don't laugh about it, I'm going to scream about it, because it's such a false narrative. That's what's selling in the spiritual community is, I'm going to sell you on your doubt that you need me to be able to heal your doubt. No, you heal your own fucking doubt.
You just people just need to understand how to do it. So I think people are taking the wrong approach.
Exactly. But that's what's selling. It's like, if I can sell you a doomsday experience because I'm going to quote fix you, that's what's selling in the spiritual community. And people who are actually coming from a place of light, I've seen this over and over again, people who are actually coming from a place of love and frequency, their stuff's not selling. They're not being successful. And it's because people want to continue. It's the frequency.
People want a shortcut. They're lazy as shit.
They don't want to have to feel the pain. They're like, oh, I'm going to sit in this light language activation and I'm not going to have to feel anything. And they're so disconnected from their emotional body. They're emotionless through an entire session. And you're like, the person who's facilitating, like me, when I do an activation, I can tell if someone's connected to their emotional body immediately, because you're not going to get through an entire session without being somewhat emotional. You got to have some type of an emotional response, whether it's heat or cold or crying or laughing because you're letting go of things. Like, there has to be an emotional response, because that's moving the body. The body is an emotional aspect of yourself.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting to me. I thought people, I think that the stuff I talk about is normal. I guess it's not, because even the spiritual people don't even understand what I'm saying.
I understand what you're saying. It makes sense to me, because I get how creation works, because everything's a mirror, right? So like, as a mom who's had a baby, your baby's created in a womb space. A womb space is dark. You have to have the perfect elements. You have to have the right energy. And it's created in the dark. Creation starts in the darkness. It starts in the void. And everybody in the spiritual community wants to avoid the void, because they're stuck, or I'm not moving fast enough, or there's always that big piece of doubt that's, instead of just sitting in the darkness, this is my lesson this year, was sitting in the darkness and not wanting to fix it. Just sit in it. Just let it be what it is, and let the energy build up. Let the energy move through the body. Let the Kundalini energy, the creation, which is Kundalini energy, move through the body, and it moves through the void. Creation is created in the void.
Well, I had this conversation with a girl about trauma, and I was saying, if we align people the right way, they understand their environment, they understand their non-conscious, we can teach them about their sensibilities, and we align them the right way. We eliminate the bad customer, which is going to be trauma. We eliminate trauma. And she's like, do we not need trauma? Do we not need this? No, we don't need trauma. Trauma has been created because of misalignment. The trauma has been created to get us back in line. We're not supposed to be having this trauma.
It's the catalyst.
Yeah, we're not, so trauma has become a part, because the trauma is trying to push you back the right direction.
Yep.
The trauma was never supposed to be in play based on creation.
Yep. Exactly.
So that's sometimes we got to reverse engineer. I think everybody's got to reverse engineer their mindset. That's what I do. I reverse engineer everything.
Yep. I always tell people, I'm like, I was actually having a conversation with my spouse last night, and he said something, and I said, why don't you flip that narrative? And he goes, oh yeah, that's a good idea. And he immediately flipped it, because once you're able to be consciously aware of something, you can flip the narrative. It's like when you go out to dinner, this is an example. I'm big on examples because I think that people learn from examples. It's like you go out to dinner. Okay. Everything's gone up. Everything's, food's gone up. Everything's gone up. Inflation's gone up. If you don't believe that, I'm sorry, but maybe this isn't the show for you. But anyways, inflation has gone up and you go out to dinner and your dinner for just the two of you, you have a couple of drinks, you have a nice dinner, and it's $150 hypothetically. Okay. And you get out of there and you're like, geez, that was so expensive. I can't believe how expensive it is to eat out these days. I mean, holy shit, that's so expensive. And you sit the whole time all the way home complaining about what your bill was. Or you can flip the script and say, thank you, prosperity spirits, for the abundance to be able to experience this human experience of enjoying the food and not having to cook. Because that's the way my mind works. I'm like, I don't have to cook tonight. That sounds great, And thanking the prosperity spirit and the money spirits for providing the abundance to be able to have the opportunity to go eat out, to giving yourself that creation, that experience instead of bitching about it. And you can feel the energy difference. If you can feel energy, you can feel the difference because it feels different. Place 100%. Of gratitude, place of lack. There's a big difference.
I mean, it's relative, right? I mean, what thing about me is whether I had $100 in my pocket or 1,000, I was the same regardless. Yep. Never thought any different, I never really thought about I think about monetary, but I don't. I like having nice stuff, but it's not like it's a big thing that changed my life. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? I don't know. I just never put a lot of value in monetary stuff. I mean, it's just, I was always fortunate enough to be in a position where I was able to support myself and live a great life. But I never looked at it that way. I never counted the peanuts, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
that makes sense.
Many of us that are trailblazers and people who are really stepping into powerful positions here in the spiritual community and even in the planet necessarily is many of us are going to take that abundance aspect and we're going to use it for something that's positive. And I think that's the difference in the exchange that's happening right now is that a lot of the 1%ers, they just keep it. They just, have 5 million different mansions, houses, and they're not really worried about, child trafficking or helping the planet to create different and new systems that help people so that we can have more of a unity consciousness. And I know that's where I'm coming from is like the aspects of myself. I know part of my mission is to help with unity consciousness and is to help society move through those lower densities and have the resources they need without feeling like they have to go without.
Well, the thing that pisses me off is how people respond to stuff. Okay. Keep a open mind for things, right? Just because you don't understand something or you don't have the knowledge about something, remember that you don't know what you don't know. So when you say that's bullshit, right? He don't know what he's talking about, right? That's your bullshit. That's your trauma. That's your nonsense that, your non-confidence because you don't know the answer. So you deflect that non-confidence to the person that's giving you new information, right? That maybe could evolve your life, that could transcend yourself, right? So when you say that's bullshit, he don't know what he's talking about, maybe listen. That's why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, but we use our mouth first, right? And we answer everything through an emotional decision, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I wake up out there and listen.
Yeah. I think
maybe learn something.
I think a lot of people respond from an emotional aspect instead of actually thinking about what they're going to respond to.
Yeah, because it's a shortcut, right? He's full of shit. I'm not listening to this. I'm out. Well, guess what? You're a dumbass because you don't want to evolve.
Yeah. It's like this person has a Democrat or a D or an R in front of their name. So that's going to tell me whether or not I'm going to listen to what they have to say, especially in politics, To me, they're all in one. It's just the same eagle. It just depends on what wing you're looking at.
Yeah. Yeah, the Democratic Republican thing. The only reason that's a thing is because the media made it a thing.
Exactly.
And that's how they make money.
Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
It's like I do these joke videos. I did some videos on the news, and I was like, there's one in there. I said, we'll report on one story for a year, right? Because it's paying the bills for that media company, but they're bringing absolutely zero value to society. And all these people out here that are talking like they know something, all the big hosts, whoever they are, if you're a big host
Mhm.
out there, change the game and talk about something everybody else is not talking about. Because if you're talking about something everybody else is talking about, there's probably no value in it.
Right.
There's value in it for yourself, right? There's value in it for yourself because you're selfish and you don't want to teach anybody anything, right? And we're going to jump in line and follow the trend. Well, let's talk about something that nobody else is talking about that actually can teach somebody something. And it's like,
Yep.
this new information that's coming out in the world, we're still listening to all the buzz shit. Like, the Jeffrey Epstein story's been around for so damn long. I mean, is it really doing anything for us but corrupting our kids' minds? Do you want to hear your kids? Do you want to hear, do you want your kids to hear people talking about, these guys having sex with young girls? Yes, it's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But either solve this shit and move on and let's create some value, or quit talking about it.
Well, I think people are wanting truth. They're wanting the answers. And the thing is, this is such a deep rooted, I mean, there's so many, one percenters that are involved that I don't know if we'll ever know the truth, because why would Hollywood want people to know that they're involved? They're not going to. They don't want people to know they're involved. So I mean, people know this. You can't go up against a grizzly bear if you're, a little mouse. It's going to take a bit of time to move through those distortions. And I think right now we're just I think 2025 is a big breakdown for humanity. Like, we're experiencing a lot of deconstruction, a lot of awakening. And it's very fascinating because before Donald Trump got into presidency, your Democrats didn't believe in child trafficking. You didn't have that. But now that he's president and they think that he's involved, now all of a sudden, all these Democrats believe in child trafficking and they think he's involved. And now they think that there's all these things in it. So it's like people make choices based on what their quote beliefs are, and that's your default mode. So the only way to get out of a default mode is to start to move in a different direction. So if you're used to moving left and right, move front and back, because that's the only way you're going to change the pattern. Like, think differently.
Mm-hmm.
It's like even with people when they're dating in their relationships and they date the same person, they have you have 4 or 5 marriages under your belt and you're dating, it's the same story over and over again. It's because you're dating the same person, just a different fucking character. You're not going to get out of a shitty relationship and then a year later jump into another one and think it's going to be this miraculous. I mean, you can do a lot of healing work to get into a different frequency, but typically most people don't. They just jump in from that codependency relationship to one to after another, and they just continue the fucking pattern. And I coach people in this, and it's the same. It's the same. It's like, you have to change the pattern. You have to say no. You have to be like, I deserve to be treated better than this, because I coach a lot of women. I deserve to be treated better than this, and I'm not going to put up with that, and then cut it off. But people aren't willing to take the bold move and really just figure out their fucking worth,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, they want to know the truth, but what do you want to know the truth about? Do you want to know the truth about creation? Do we want to know the truth about, the things that people think are easy, right? Or the things that, I'll say this, the things that are the hardest to figure out, we take, the low road because we're lazy. We don't want to push, we don't want to push the narrative. We don't want to disrupt the apple cart. And, it's just like I hear this Huff guy that talks about religion. He reads all his shit through books. And I said this before. Bruce Lee said this in the 70s. If you create a style and that becomes the gospel, and then that gospel becomes the doctrine, you crystallize growth. So if you're reading books and you're trying to teach people information, that's a limited narrative based on what you're reading. And I think people need to think about that, because they stop there. They stop at that doctrine because everybody's praised this doctrine and everybody believes in this doctrine. That's a collective belief. What else is out there? That's why science only uses 2 parts of law of attraction, right? It's a limited process. We're stopping the process. We're not thinking back far enough. We're stopping our minds from thinking back far enough. We're living in a limited space.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Because we're lazy.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. Exactly. That's why people, they have one little problem with them and they don't try to figure it out on their own. They don't try to figure out their own health issues. It's like, if you're not eating healthy and you're not eating clean and you're not moving your body, that's your first job before you ever go to a doctor, I think. I mean, I'm not here to give medical advice, but I just think a lot of people are so quick to just run to a physician and, fix my anxiety. Maybe your anxiety is your shitty relationship. Just saying. Maybe your depression is that you're being emotionally abused and you just don't want to admit that that's what you're doing. Like, people don't want to look in the fucking mirror. So do you feel like this path is still evolving, and what's calling to you next?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm being pushed every day. I try to do my exercises. I go to the beach every day. I go swimming every day. And yeah, I just want to do whatever I'm supposed to do. I don't know the answer yet, but I think the answer will come to me. The fact I have scalar energy coming out of my hands that I can project through people's bodies and actually help them, I think is a big deal.
Yeah.
Maybe I can enhance that. And I don't know if you told me that I shouldn't worry about my incarnations,
Mm.
and not make them a big part of now, and just focus on myself
Yep.
and utilize my abilities now, because that's when I will step into my full power,
Yep.
whatever that is.
I mean, knowing who you were is information, like, it's great, but it doesn't change who you currently are in this human experience. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you are who you are and you know who you are. And when you get to that point in that mastery of a level of knowing who you are, knowing your gifts, mastering your gifts, really having foundational aspects of ground clearing and shielding your frequency every single fucking day. I don't care what anybody says, but if you do that every single day, you're going to be able to hold at a level of frequency that is going to give you the answers that you need within you, because you are connected to divine energy. You are connected to the divine energy of all things that was, will, or can be. And so, it's important that you have foundational aspects to be able to, I call it tools. It's like, if I get in a session with somebody, I have an array of tools because I've learned them through my own healing experience, and being able to pull out whatever stops I need to be able to help people move into their remembrance of who they are and assist people into creating their own experience. And I think that's, I don't heal anybody. I just remind people of who they are.
Well, since the first time we did a couple sessions together, do I feel any different
Yeah, I
than the
feel like
first
you're
couple sessions?
Yeah, I feel like you're more grounded. I feel like you're more in your body. I feel like, you're a little more softer on the edges, like you're a little more in your, um, creation energy, instead of feeling like you're having to power through things. It's like, I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to take care of myself, which, John, I don't think you really do that a whole lot. Take care of yourself. And I feel like this is a time in your life where you're finally making yourself a priority. And I think that's important. And especially for any men that are listening, like, it's important that you feel safe in your own frequency and in your own emotional body, so that you can hold that energy for a divine partner, or for yourself, or for your own healing. Or if you're going to be a facilitator, you need to be able to hold energy of an emotional aspect in a way that's, comes from a place of love.
Well, I've been going through this separation divorce because I think my wife's frequency is low. I think my frequency has pushed her away to some extent, but and then my daughter took her to Ole Miss, so I've been crying more, I think, recently than I have in my whole life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're gonna continue this conversation with part 2. So stay tuned for a second part. And thank you for joining us inside the Sacred Rebellions, where truth is sovereign, healing is holy, and your voice matters. If something stirred in your soul today, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, speak it, and let it ripple. Hit that subscribe button and stay close. The revolution isn't coming. It's already moving through you. Until next time, stay grounded in your truth and rise in your divine remembrance. Have a beautiful day. Okay. Welcome back to the Sacred Rebellion, the space where sovereignty leads, systems are questioned, and the cosmic truth always finds its way home. We welcome back for part 2, John Edmonds-Kozma, CEO and founder of Bang Productions. We're going to continue with our conversation. And John, welcome back.
How are we doing this today? We're doing all right today?
Yeah, I'm a little tired.
Thanks for having me back. Thanks for talking to me.
Yeah, I spent a little too much time on a boat yesterday, so I'm a little like sun baked a little bit. Anyways, let's get into like talking about how you've used your sense of feeling to direct you in this awakening experience.
Yeah, when I talk to people, I'm very passionate and very strong about what I'm talking about, because everything I talk about, I feel, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel, I sense, It's a direction. And I think people have a hard time understanding that if they don't feel it, and when you talk about information you feel, that's very foundational. And people, I don't know, people have a hard time believing those types of things, I guess, or the things I'm talking about. I don't know what it is, but that's why I'm so passionate about what I talk about, how I talk about it, and the information I have, um, with creation and this whole enlightenment and everything that's been going on in my life. And that's why I get, because I'm the type of person, like, if I don't know anything about the subject, I don't talk. It's not the fact that I'm a know-it-all. I just don't talk about things I don't know anything about. But if I know something about the subject, then and I feel that, I will double down on that
Yeah.
information, no matter what it is.
Yeah, I'm a little bit like that too, where I won't pretend I know something if I don't, but if I know something and it's embedded in truth, I allow people to have their own thoughts and their own feelings. But when it comes to, divinity of truth, I definitely will be one of those. If you ask my opinion, I'm going to give it to you. And then it's really interesting when people ask your opinion. I've had multiple times where people are like, don't you love this space? The spaces feel so good. Don't you love it? And I'll be like, no, you've got portals open, or you need to clear the grid, or, and especially if it's a spiritual place, I feel like a lot of times that will ruffle feathers. But I'm here to clear grids and, activate different aspects of people to bring forward authenticity and truth. And so it will ruffle feathers. And I think a lot of times when we are embodied in truth and anchored into God frequency, just existing ruffles feathers. And that's just how it works. It's like, it doesn't matter what you put out there, it's going to trigger somebody.
Well, it's when all this stuff started coming, the energy coming out of my hands and all this information, creation of four and all this information, I didn't, what am I supposed to do? I want to make sure I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And, when you have this scalar energy, maybe I'm a universal type of enlightenment person. I don't know, where I can heal, and then you kind of guided me in this whole grid work thing that I didn't really know anything about, in having that energy, being like a conduit, and
Mm-hmm.
having energy come through me and putting into the ground, believe it or not, which I feel go through my body, through my feet, into the ground. And, when I had this information about creation of four coming through, I keep having more and more pieces of the puzzle coming to me. And I said creation is linear. And I had this guy come in the other day, and he said that, that I was talking about the four corners of the world, right? And I'll backtrack to creation of four and explain what that is a little bit. But we're talking about the four corners of the world. So with that being said, my intuition and understanding that is that two of the four corners of the world are Chimney Rock and Atlas Mountains. And I had this thing about Atlas Mountains and Chimney Rock being two of the places that were two of the four corners of the world. Now, this guy said that I didn't know, which this kind of started resonating too, said that the Appalachian Mountains connection, right? That Appalachian Mountains were connected, is the same mountain range that is connected to the Atlas Mountains,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I went, okay, bingo. So I want to come back to that. But when this creation of four came about, that God created the universe in four powers, the universe is in four parts. And then we're going to move to the planetary system. You have four terrestrial planets, you have four gas planets. I had intuition that the binders for that system is the sun, the moon, and Pluto. And then you have go to the earth. Let's go to the earth, and creation is linear. Let's go to the earth. You have inner core, outer core, mantle, crust, four parts to the earth. You have four directions. You're made of four humors. There's four blood types. You have four parts to your brain. You have four parts to your heart. And all this, from the four powers to creation of four, is tied to the human body all the way through, because that creation being tied to the human body is all the way tied to our pineal gland. And in speeding up this thought process of being tied to the pineal gland, and that being God's data center, when I noticed the Egyptian symbol and I looked at the symbol, and I looked at the bone that represents the one part that's the bone in our heads. And if you put that bone on a flat surface, that's a 1/4 slant, right? So it's
Mhm.
4 powers all the way through the 4 systems, right? There's 4 systems. There's the universe, there's the planetary system, there's the earth system, and there's the human system,
Mhm.
right? And I can explain that as well. And then there's 4 quadrants, right, on Earth. And I think each of those quadrants were created in a linear process. And that's where I came up. All right, if there's 4 quadrants, then I discovered foundationally 4.6 billion years ago. If you look at the spiritual locations in each of those quadrants, they are the oldest areas from the beginning of creation. So there's 4 heavily spiritual places in each of the 4 quadrants of Earth that is foundational from the beginning of creation in the Precambrian era. And that's how science tells on itself, because you can go to those spots, you can see what the oldest places were at the beginning from the Precambrian era, 4.6 billion years ago. You can see it, it'll tell you what are the oldest areas and the most developed. And one of the 4 most developed areas in this quadrant of Earth was Chimney Rock in the Blue Ridge Mountains. So then, if you think about the 4 corners and thinking about this thing with Atlantis, right, in the Atlas Mountains, the Greenland being the highest point in Greenland being the top of the 4 corners, and the highest point in Antarctica, the other 4 corner. Now, if we take let's think pre-flood, and this is just new. This is just a rationale based on what this guy told me, right?
Mhm.
If that Appalachian mountain ridge is the Blue Ridge Mountains, one of the most developed areas from the Precambrian era. That mountain ridge is the Appalachian Mountains. Pre-flood is tied to the Atlas Mountains,
Mhm.
right? So you have a mountain ridge that's going from the Appalachians over here near Chimney Rock all the way to the Atlas Mountains, which if you look on a map, they're like this, right?
Mhm.
So let's take a mountain ridge there. Now, let's take another one. Let's see what I think there was another ridge that went from Greenland all the way to Antarctica. Guess
Mhm.
what? Each of these mountain ridges created a cross in the middle of where creation has been done. I think it's been done 53 times, where the Atlantic Ocean is. So if you think about that, Earth is tied to the foundational process of my whole philosophy of creation of 4. So
Mhm.
if that is right, and I got to do the research and check and see if there's a mountain ridge that comes down in between and crosses through the Appalachian mountain ridge that connects the Atlas Mountains. But
Mhm.
that would define that cross would define each of the 4 quadrants of Earth. And that's foundational to the 4 pillars. That's
Mhm.
foundational to my process of how to align humanity. So that kind of blew me away a little bit, that aligns with my book, with the thing I want to do with alignment of the 4 pillars, trying to realign humanity, because Earth is linear to creation and a human body, right? So then we're talking about archetypes. I think each of those 4 quadrants, the archetype was created based on the environment, right? And that's where you would get your different archetypes based on your environment. So it's just very weird that all these things are aligning in a linear process. And when I started thinking about this creation of 4 process 2 years ago. So this mountain ridge thing is very, very interesting, and I want to do some more research, and hopefully they didn't hide the information, but that makes a lot of sense, and that would defy everybody's rationale of where creation started, and where the binders are, the crystal grid system are. I don't know if Egypt, I don't even know if Egypt and that area of the world are the real places of where Jesus walked. Because when you go back to the 4 systems, when I said there's 4 systems in creation, and I had another rationale of this lady told me that ether was the 5th gas. And my intuition told me that no, there's not a 5th gas. Then I understood that ether, when I started doing the research, ether is the binder, and a lot of people have said this, is the binder of the universe.
Mhm.
It's not gravity. Scientists have said gravity is a thing, and gravity is not a thing. Ether is what binds the universe, and there's 3 parts to that system. There's 3 different types of ether, right? Now let's move to the second system where all this aligns. I didn't look this up. I said, all right, the planetary system has the 3 binders: the sun, the moon, and Pluto, right? And there's a ether element with those three binders. Now let's go to the earth, right? Grid system. When Michelle told me I should go ground Bermuda, which I did because I want to do what I'm supposed to be doing. So if you take Bermuda, if you take Chimney Rock, and you take Trail Ridge, Florida, and you drew a line and made that triangle, that's the binder of the grid system for Earth in the concentration of the crystals, right? It's the concentration of the crystals that would support and give energy to humanity. And if you look at those three locations, there's an ether element there. Now let's go to the force system, which I've been talking about, and bringing back in where science doesn't recognize the sensitivities, esoteric part of law of attraction. They only recognize environment and foundation, which is two parts. And we want to bring back in the sensibilities and align the humans based on the understanding of the law of attraction. There's an ether element with the law of attraction, which is the binder for humanity in the four systems. So that aligns as well. Mm-hmm. Now, what, a good lawyer told me I'm too old to believe in coincidences. Why does that fit so perfectly?
The only thing I think of is that because it's truth. It doesn't. I don't believe in coincidences either. So I'm like, I don't believe in coincidences either. It's like everything happens for a reason. Everything aligns for a reason. And I think that a lot of times we don't really understand fully what it is until we get like a piece of a puzzle and piece of a puzzle and piece of a puzzle. And then all of a sudden one day that light bulb just hits and all of it makes sense. And anybody who's on an awakening path can attest to this, because it's like, when you start developing gifts, first thing that comes on is usually like, one of your clairs, right? Like maybe you can smell things or hear things or sense things or feel things or see things, right? And then another clair comes on, and another clair comes on, and another clair is on, until they're all connected. And then when they're all turned on, I call it the claircognizance, where it's like, I'm not necessarily using one specific clair, where they're just kind of combined together. And so, all the clairs activated together. It kind of sounds a little bit like this, like you're putting pieces of a puzzle together, and then eventually it will just be so clear, and the puzzle, you'll see the whole picture, right? It's like, that's in everything in our lives, right? We put pieces of puzzles together and then it makes completely clear. And so I think what you're doing is you're putting pieces of the puzzle together, and you're getting closer to that big picture of what you're here to understand. And I think that you'll probably write a book about it. And I think it's going to be really powerful for a lot of people to understand. Maybe we'll even solve some of the mystery of like why Bermuda Triangle is such a powerful space, because it's a vortex. Why is there a vortex there? Like, I think that's what you're unraveling is that's an energy center. We know Bermuda is an energy center, and there's that triangle right there, and there's a lot of energy in that space, and no one's really been able to really understand what that means. I mean, there's been psychics that have channeled it, and, some people believe it's where some, powerful crystals are, which is what you're talking about. I know I've had that in regressions where they talk about the Atlantis crystals dumped in a space where that particular area holds really powerful crystals from where they were a Lemuria, which is actually what caused the explosion in Atlantis, and the ley line shifted. So, I mean, it really just depends on, what people, want to perceive as truth. And I think that where you're at, this is your truth. And I think it's going to be a lot of people's truth. And I think that you're going to really show a lot of people what this means. So if you were to take this entire area and you were going to create all of this together, what does the power of creation give to people? What is it going to help people in their lives?
Well, it's like I said, it's going to eliminate the bad customer, because we've been taking these seeds of information that are wrong. We're starting, we started this unbalanced system with the, Newtonian model of reality. Mm-hmm. We're the Newtonian model of reality, I think, was in the 1600s. And I'm not sure what happened before then. I would have to do some research, but I think when that was accepted, that's really when the unbalance started for humans, because we're supposed to be out front. And I've said this for years too. I said, if we feed off what we see, so we feed off what we see based on the Newtonian model of reality, which is completely wrong. And that's why science only recognizes two parts of law of attraction, because it's putting us behind the curve. Right. So if we feed off what we see, we continue to create opinions and controversy. But if we understand creation, then we get to the answer quicker.
Right.
So, that's very simple to me.
Yeah.
And I think when people start to understand creation, it's going to solve a lot of problems because this is mathematical. It's a percentage game, believe it or not. And we can start to fix those percentages of unbalance based on this information.
Yeah.
And I can show how the information that science gives us kind of speaks against us. It's not as, once you get it, it's not as hard. Once you can rationalize this, it's not as hard to understand as you would think.
Yeah.
Avi Loeb told me, or not Avi Loeb, but what's the guy? Dr. Greer. Yeah, Dr. Greer. I told him about creation of four a couple years ago on my podcast, and he's like, you'll never get there. But now I'm here today, and I've got a lot more information than I had 2 years ago. And it keeps aligning. It's in a linear process. So I don't know how you deny that. If you have an instinct about something, then you look it up and it's exactly what you thought based on a rationale, then how do you say that's not right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I've done that too many times now, huh?
Yeah, because I think the thing is like when I communicate with spirit on a spiritual aspect and not necessarily in a, in a multidimensional aspect, I think a lot of times people forget that it's like you get a hit, I call it a download, right? A download. And then you ask spirit to start showing you the physical evidence in your reality. So what happens is what I'm hearing from you is like, you've gotten essentially like downloads, and then you're going out and you're like, okay, I want to connect this physically in proof and concrete evidence, which I tell people all the time. Spirituality or esoteric concepts, right? Metaphysical concepts, they are supposed to coexist with science. But that's what science has taken out, is the esoteric aspects of us. So we have been programmed to believe that we are just a physical body. But now we're starting to realize, because science has now proven, we have an aura and we have all of these multidimensional aspects of ourselves, and science and spirituality is supposed to coexist together, where they have been separated since I've known, and probably for, I don't even know how long, but religion and science don't coexist together very often, right? Because a lot of people, if you believe in the Bible's only quote 6,000 years old, roughly, right? We know the earth is older than that. So science and religion aren't coexisting together yet. But what I'm hearing from you is that you want to have them coexist together.
100%. I mean, the physics that Oppenheimer and Einstein operated on is not even real.
No, because
God,
we don't work on base 10,
yeah,
we work on base 12s.
yeah. And God didn't want them some bitches to split an atom.
No.
And we're going to say Einstein was intelligent? No, he wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed. Nor Oppenheimer was the sharpest tool in the shed. If they were really, really intelligent people, they wouldn't try to split an atom and create something that should have never been created, right? So how do we speak against? So if you're going to argue with me that Einstein is a smart person, how do you speak against God? Are you a religious person? Everybody wants to say they're religious, but most people who say they're religious or think they know religion because they read a book, did they find thyself, right? Do they not use absolutes, right? I mean, those are two of the big things. Nobody knows who they are, and everybody uses absolutes. So how are you a religious person when you don't even understand some of the main pieces of the puzzle of what God wanted us to do? They weren't that smart.
Yeah, and the thing is God and even the Bible wants you to be a good person, wants you to love thyself, not judge other people, not covet other people's, wife or other things like envy, and there's so many things in the Bible that it states, but how many people are actually living by that?
Yeah, and the absolute thing, if you ever watch Star Wars, the trilogy of all the movies of Star Wars from the beginning to the end, if you listen to what these Jedi say, and this is how brilliant, what's his name, who created Star Wars was, how he got this message in these movies. Star Wars are biblical.
Yeah.
Right? They are biblical. Yeah. Because like Jedis would never believe in an absolute, right? Because they knew absolutes don't work.
That's right.
So, absolutes being used in society today are a big, big problem.
Yep.
from our education to our government to you name it, right? Because everybody, and that goes back to my philosophy of tone. Everybody don't have the same tone. If you have 4 archetypes, right, and each of the 4 quadrants created 4 different archetypes based on the environment,
Mm-hmm.
right? You have to understand that,
Right.
right? So that archetype was the beginning within that environment. Now, that being perpetuated in each of those quadrants of Earth, right? There was a multiple tones that came out of each archetype. So even if we looked at, all right, let's try to create a system to define archetypes and then home that in a percentage game, and then group this archetype here, group this archetype here, group this archetype here, group this archetype here, because each of them will have a different tone in how they convey their message, right?
Yeah.
Let's start there and then determine how many tones came out of that archetype, and then create these, education will be catered to this archetype, right? Education will be catered to this archetype, right? Then you're in sync. That's alignment.
Mm-hmm.
That speaks to foundational process of what I've been talking about alignment, right?
Yeah.
How we should understand our environment first. We understand our non-conscious, putting our non-conscious in the right direction for wealth, health, relationships, because we
Yep.
have that information and the non-conscious is not talked about in the science community. So before you even speak, before you even feel anything, we know your directions. If your sensibilities never kicked in, you would have zombies going in the right direction. The non-conscious beings would be going in the right direction. But what has happened, because we're not in alignment, when you grab that wheel of sensitivities and it's not defined properly and it's not even recognized to understand it, right? It's easy to push people to the dark side. You know what I mean? It's because that decision, you can go right or left. Wherever you land in discovery could be dark or light. And that's a big, big deal. And that's where that absolute process comes into play. And I think we have to understand that, because if you understood those archetype situations, right, that tells us, we know what our environment is. I don't know why that's hard to figure out. Does it sound like I mean, this, to me, it sounds simple. To me, in my head, it's simple to me. I'm just trying to find a way to make people understand it. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think that the people who are meant to understand it will understand it. And I think there's a lot of people, it's like the absolute thing. I love how you brought that up, because I see that a lot in politics. It's like, this is absolutely the truth. This is absolutely what's going on. This is absolutely the side you should pick on. This is absolute, absolute, absolute. And it causes chaos, and it causes wars, and it causes all these things. And the thing is there's always 2 sides of a story. There's two sets of wings on a bird, right? We have 2 arms. There's a reason, because you have essentially you have 2 perceptions that you're experiencing at the same time. Like, and it's not necessarily that one is right and one is wrong, because that doesn't actually exist. When you start to do your awakening, you realize that people they're where they're at because they're choosing that. They're choosing into it consciously. So the creation aspect, I think you always say this, go from a discovery mind to a creation mind. You've said that to me multiple times. And I feel like that's what I've done in the last year, is I've really moved my mindset from a discovery of like learning something to creating something. And I think a lot of people are in that discovery mindset. They're not in that creation mindset, because that's the program. That's the matrix system. That's what our the mind is connected to, is in that discovery, that constant yearning for learning, because there's something out there that we can't grasp. There's something out there that we don't understand. Nothing is absolute. So, religion, spirituality, and stuff like that, it's all in, embedded in this discovery mindset. Well, once you shift into a creation mindset, then you start to trust yourself. That's when you trust your inner voice. That's when you trust your intuition. That's when you trust who you are. And that is the difference, is because the awakening is moving yourself this way. And then once you figure out, like Yeshua taught us a creation mindset. He didn't teach us a discovery mindset. He literally told everybody, look what I can do, because I trust myself, because I know my worth. I know who I am. And if everybody flipped into that energy, what a freaking flippin' 360 our entire world would have. And that's what I'm hearing from you, is that once people understand creation, then they can start creating from within.
Well, I always said, if you're, it's like I tell creators, if you're your authentic self, you're passionate about what you're talking about, and this is your personal absolute within.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are passionate, it comes from the heart, it's authentic, it's going to resonate more with a person because it's coming from the real foundation of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
So when you create these emotional pieces of information that are just feeding off emotion, which I see over and over and over, there's not a lot of authenticity there or passion behind that narrative. So
Right.
when I said, when we feed off what we see and we create more opinions and controversy, if we feed off what we see, if you understand who you are, you're authentic, you're passionate, and going back to creation, and you create something that leads, that is new, that is fresh,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're evolving. You're evolving humanity. We're not crystallizing growth. We're leading. We eliminate those opinions and controversy because we're creating something new that's passionate and authentic to the creator, which we are all creators within, if
Yep.
we understand who we are.
Yep. I always tell people, everyone's always like, what's my mission here on the planet? What's the purpose of being human? And you want to know what the purpose of being human is? In my opinion, the purpose of being human is to learn how to be a master creator in physical reality. That's what I think humans are here to learn. That's what we're here to. We're the only physical aspect in a 3-dimensional body, which is the lowest of low. Like, you're not going to get any lower than 3-dimensional and be conscious. Okay. So you're at 3-dimensional and you're going to co-create with your reality. What does that actually mean? That actually means you're going to use what John just said, and you're going to take that foundational aspects of creation, and you're going to actually start to co-create with the frequencies and your belief systems, and you're going to start to create what you want in your reality. And that's why you hear, like, I've even read some people where they become, millionaires very quickly because they start to use those co-creation experiences in your physical form. And I think this is really foundational, because what you're saying is that you can manifest with this energy of creation, these foundational aspects that you're talking about, and then you can manifest what you want in your reality by being the creator instead of coming back and just being the consumer. Right? Like, I'm just going to consume all this information instead of being the one that's delivering the information. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. Because if you hold on 1 second. Hello. Well, and this is one big piece too that I'm tired of hearing. When you hear, I was watching an ad for Mind Valley, and all these people lead with manifestation, right? What's the other? Resonance, law of resonance, all this bullshit. So they're selling these words of emotion. They're leading with words of emotion. They're leading with manifestation because they think that's an attraction to people because it's tied to a monetary system.
Mm-hmm.
It's how they've created this.
Yep.
And what they're not doing and what they're not telling people, they're just trying to sell shit. And they were leading with these, law of resonance, manifestation, whatever emotional words they can pluck out of the system to create emotions. What they're not leading with is none of that shit works unless you find thyself, right? That's what you need to lead with. That's why I wanted to create the alignment, aligning the 4 pillars.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't know thyself, if you're not in alignment, those buzzwords, you can know what they are all day long,
right?
But they're not going to work and they're not going to resonate with you unless you have alignment, unless you know thyself, right? And that's where we need to lead with. That's what I want to lead with in this community, because nobody's doing it. They're just trying to sell shit, which is bullshit. And it's confusing. Mind Valley needs to close their doors. They're confusing the world. They're full of shit. You know what I mean? I mean, seriously, like, if you're going to be out here in this space and act like you're a leader in the space, know what the fuck you're talking about. I mean, that pisses me off. Seriously. We're leading with these emotional words, and you're not telling people to find themselves first and give them something to stand on and create value for themselves, create alignment for themselves.
Yep.
And we just want to make money off of you and not help you at all, really, is what they're doing.
Well, they want people to become codependent with them. And that's like one of the biggest sales pitch in the spiritual community. is they want you to spend, I'm all for spending what you feel like you're worth. I'm a huge advocate of that. $25,000 containers for spiritual development. I really think that is, if you have a good practitioner, that's really worth it. I know in my containers, and John's been in a session with me, I make you lead the way. It's your own. I'm just the car. I'm just the GPS leading you in the direction. Are you going to get to your destination? Yes. Is it going to take you a long time? Yes. It's like the fast track. But what I do in a session is your session and the way that you are actually moving in the direction you want to is by choice. It's everything you're consenting to. It's deep rooted in belief systems. It's deep rooted in your frequency. So your belief systems attract the frequency that you're creating because your beliefs are actually the signal, right? So it's like the key notes that are creating the frequency is your belief systems, which is going to create a frequency, and your frequency is what attracts what you're calling in. So if you don't believe in yourself and you don't believe that what you are wanting in your life is supposed to happen, I'm going to tell you right now, it doesn't matter how many fucking affirmations you're going to write. It doesn't matter how many times you write in your journal how much you want to be a millionaire. If you don't fucking believe that you actually deserve money in your life and your nervous system isn't comfortable with earning money, it's not gonna matter how many fucking manifestation workshops you go to, you're not going to attract the money that you want. You're just not. You have to be comfortable with seeing $12.5 million in your bank account. How does that feel in your fucking body? How does it feel when $20,000 hits your bank account? Does that make you rattle? Does it make you have all these beliefs come forward? Like, oh my God, I can't have $12,000 coming into my account overnight because of these are the reasons. Those are your fucking foundational belief systems, which has coded your nervous system. And if your nervous system is not comfortable with money, you can take as many fucking manifestation classes as you want, but you're not going to get the money because you don't believe that you deserve it. That's
100%.
foundational. That's foundational.
Well,
There's my
I
soapbox
think
today.
you're very well, I think you're very foundational. And I think that you remove those pieces to get us to our foundation. You know what I mean? So I think what I just said, what I just said on this show is worth a lot to the world.
Yep.
And hopefully we all can get there.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, I think if you understand the creation and then you can change your belief systems, and then once you've changed your belief systems and programmed your nervous system to believe that you deserve money, then you start to use what John said in creating what you want in your reality. And that's how you manifest something into your physical form, is by the law of creation. The law of four is what you're saying.
Correct. The law of creation. I think we just started a new term, didn't we?
Michelle just downloaded the law of creation. Yeah. Sounds like we probably should make a workshop on manifestation.
Yeah, right. We just need to get this. Yeah, I'm homing back in. Hopefully we can get this out to more people, and summer's over, so it's time to get back to work.
Summer's over, time to get back to work. Right? Kids are going back to school. It's now time for self-development and to co-create your reality, right?
100%.
Thank you for joining us inside the Sacred Rebellion today. We're Sacred Rebellion podcast where truth is sovereign, healing is holy, and your voice matters. If something stirred in your soul today, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, speak it, and let it ripple. Hit that subscribe button and stay close. The revolution isn't coming. It's already moving through you. Until next time, stay grounded in your truth and rise in your divine remembrance. Have a beautiful day.